Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, The Problem with People, presented by social intelligence consultant at TRACOM, Jason Kiesau. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting in moderating today's session. We are on Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be emailing you a copy of this recording after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use that chat or that Q&A option for our short dedicated Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 and TRACOM are so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Jason.
Thank you very much. Hey, everyone. Happy for you to join us with the webinar, The Problem with People. My name is Jason Kiesau. A little about me in the context of this webinar here. I am a people person. So as I'm talking about the problem, it's going to be some personal experience, some self-deprecation, and what I've learned about the opportunities rooted in the social intelligence research and 20 years of experience of talking to people and leaders about this stuff. So excited for you to be here. Um, I hope this is interactive. I hope you're going to utilize the chat. And we've got some moderators that will be paying attention to it as I will as also. But let's get us warmed up with this. So as we get going here, I want to know, why did you sign up for today? Is there anything specific you're looking to get out of our time together? Put it in the chat. Improved teamwork skills. Excellent. Learn more soft skills. People wanting to become more socially aware. Love it. Be more effective navigating challenges. Working with people is hard. Leadership ideas, growth, improving communication. Always good to learn with deal with people. Yep. I'm not seeing anything in here that we are not going to be covering. Yeah, so everyone's here for a different reason. Obviously, the title of it, The Problem with People, is intended to catch your attention. But look forward to having a really rich conversation about this and again, answering questions along the way. So, the reason we're here is what we refer to as the concept of versatility. I'm going to tell you what we mean by it and what this means to you, but I want you to stay in the chat for a minute there. When you think about that word versatility, give me your definition of it and give me an example of something you find you have high versatility or things that are versatile. What does the word versatility mean to you? Being adjustable, learning to adapt. Thanks, Steve. Flexible. Ability to, I'm seeing a lot of flexibility. Capability to adapt. I'm seeing flexibility. I'm seeing adapt, pivot, nimble, flex your situation and those around you, relate to others. Gold stars for everybody. You're right on. So we understand the concept of versatility. Call it flexibility, call it adaptability. My goal with this today is that you walk out of here with greater versatility, higher versatility. So what does that mean? In the TRACOM terms and the Educate 360 terms, it's your ability to adapt how you work and communicate to what's needed in the situation and in the interaction. Think about that. You're working with people, you're working in various situations, and you're able to look at it differently because we have to be open and curious to be able to see it, and you're able to recognize the needs of the situation and the interaction of the people you're working with. And based on that information, you're able to adapt how you're working and communicating. All the research we've done, TRACOM is a social intelligence company that's been in business 60 years. We're a global organization working within Educate 360. We have a lot of data that shows that versatility is a predictor of success. So, as we're talking about this today, and my desire for you to have higher versatility, this should increase your possibility of success. This should make your life easier. Utilizing the things we're going to be talking about should improve your communications. Now, none of this is an easy button. People are people. We all have different needs and ways of meeting our needs, and how one person naturally behaves may be in direct opposition in another person's needs. So there's no easy button here. But I think it makes the people side of things make a little more sense. But versatility is the key. This is going to be the return on your investment for being here. So let's talk about the problem. The title, The Problem with People. Here is what I have observed, and this is what I experience as a people person. People are tend to be caring. They tend to be considerate. They tend to think about other people. They tend to make an effort to care and relate and things like that. And we're told throughout our lives that's really good. We need people that care and have empathy and look out for others and all that, all those things we've been taught since preschool and kindergarten in our homes of being nice to people and things like that. Because we do some of those things, we tend to have a chip on our shoulder and think we may have it figured out as it pertains to other people. Because dang it, we are people. I'm a people person. I mean, that's something to talk about and brag about. Organizations are looking for people, right? Um, there's a variety of strengths that come with that make all those things wonderful strengths and assets to benefit us. There are challenges that come along with it that we need to talk about. That if we're not aware of, we may never learn, therefore never course correct to be more versatile. We may never get the feedback on it. That gap of information can slow us down and hold us back as well, right? So we want to talk about this stuff, and we want to talk about some of the challenges that come with being a people person, but also what that means with how we work with other people, task-oriented people, for example, as we get going here. So part of the problem there is the awareness around this, and I'm hoping to close the gap. So today's talk track, we're going to be talking about how we tend to work and communicate. This is good for you people, and good for you task people as we're going through this. We're going to talk about needs, preferences, and stressors and the role they play with how we work and communicate with one another. We're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to go through 6 key growth opportunities and land on the things we can do to be more versatile. Remember, we just talked about the power of versatility, being able to deflect and adjust and flex and adjust and adapt and things of that nature. So, what we tend to know, and I remember hearing about this earlier in my career, that there are 2 types of people in the workplace. We have people that tend to be more task oriented. These are the task people. And we have people that tend to be more people oriented. These are the people. And in all my experiences, even working in L&D and business coaching and doing diversity training and leading training departments, we know this is a thing, but we kind of stop there. And I want to make that make more sense. So we're going to ask you a poll question in a second here. Do you tend to be more task oriented or do you tend to be more people oriented? Now, here's the reality of it. Just because you're task oriented doesn't mean you don't have any people orientation. And just because you're people oriented doesn't mean you don't have task orientation. It's just where we tend to live most of the time. We're at about 70 respondents, about 60%, shy of 60% tend to be more task oriented. About 40% tend to be more people oriented. I'm always curious as to the distribution of the people that are going to attend this on what you think about that. About 80% of the folks on the call. So we're at about 58% task oriented, 41% people oriented. And the way that the norming works around this, the way that our social intelligence program, and specifically our social style model works, which is where a lot of this is rooted in, about 50% of the general population tends to be more task oriented. About 50% of the general population tends to be more people oriented. And there's a large blend in the middle that tend to have both, but we tend to have a dominant. And I love Mandy's comment there. It's dependent on the situation, could be task or people oriented. That's where we want to get to with this. We want to get to a place to where it is situation oriented. That through versatility, we're task oriented when we need to be, but we're also people oriented when we need to be. Thank you for sharing that. So we have a nice split here and nice benefit for both types of people. And again, we're all a blend, okay? But we tend to have a dominant that shows up. So the reality is 90% of our thought, behavior, and communication patterns are automatic. Think about that. When you wake up on a daily basis, 90% of the things that happen, over 90% of the things that happen, we don't even actively we're not actively paying attention to, and that's anything from like all the biological stuff. I mean, we're not consciously thinking about how we're blinking and how we're breathing and how we're doing things of that nature. If we make an effort, we can start to change how we do it for a certain period of time. We're generally not paying attention to that, but that also goes into our behavioral tendencies. So 90% of our thought, behavior, and communication patterns are automatic. These are our good and bad behavioral tendencies, or productive or less productive behavioral tendencies. These are our good and bad habits. These are our biases. These are our stress responses. And if we're not playing an active role in our experience, and if human nature runs the show, we're going to operate within a dominant pattern. So that dominant pattern shows up in that task orientation. People that tend to be more oriented, that tends to be their pattern in how they do things. They tend to focus on tasks more than people. Doesn't mean they never focus on people. And the people, the dominant pattern tends to be more focused on people and the relationship and things like that, prioritizing over the task orientation sometime. So we just want to learn more about that because the opportunity is to learn more about ourselves and others in relationship to this and be able to, through that awareness, maybe set new expectations or have greater awareness and do things different in the spirit of higher versatility. So our brain has two operating systems. I won't get too nerdy with the neuroscience here. We have a fast system and a slow system. We talk a lot about this left brain, right brain stuff. But the fast system is our 90%. And there's a reason why it's automatic, and there's a reason why it's more in our subconscious. There's a reason why we're not paying attention to it. It's our brain's effort of preserving energy and make things easy and predictable. The challenge is it's not always accurate. So though it may work in a lot of situations, it's not going to work in every situation, and that's part of the lesson here is through utilizing our slow system, we need to be a little slower and deliberate with some things, a little more intentional about it. But there is a risk here because it takes more time, it takes more energy. So if you think about any goal you've had that's required you to make changes from how you normally do things, it's not always easy. It's not always mentally and emotionally easy. It's not always easy to establish those new habits. It's because we have this pull of our 90% that is running the show because that's comfortable and that's where we're used to. Well, it's that task orientation and people orientation that can lead us into wonderful opportunities or create a lot of challenges for ourselves and with others if we're not understanding the pattern and what we can do with it. But we want to interact and utilize that slow system more, and that's where the versatility comes in. So when we're thinking about task-oriented versus people-oriented people, we'll look at it on a scale here from task-oriented people on top to people toward the bottom here. And one thing we teach is we teach behavior. We teach behaviors. We teach people how to observe behaviors. So part of what we're doing here, regardless if you're more people or more task, what we're going to go through right now are what we call observable behaviors, things you can pay attention to with other people that will tell you whether or not they tend to be more task oriented or people oriented. Right out of the gate is how we tend to show emotion. So people that tend to be more task oriented, they tend to show less emotions. It appears that they are controlling their emotions. They're more stoic. They have more of a natural poker face. As you go down the scale to people, we refer to them as more emoting. They show more emotion. You see it, you hear it. Now, task oriented people, it doesn't mean they show no emotion. They just don't show as much emotion as you go down the scale for people that are being more emoting. So you can think about in those terms as well. Do you show a lot of emotion? Do you not? Do you tend to be more reserved? Do you talk with your hands? Facial expressions, things of that nature. But here's how we can observe it. As I just said, task people tend to show less emotion. People tend to show more emotion. So, and be thinking about this as you're thinking about yourself as more task and more people, and see where that lands with how you completed the poll. No surprise here. Task people tend to be more task oriented. People tend to be more people oriented. Animation. Less animation with people that tend to be more task oriented. People that are people tend to be more animated. Task people tend to be a little more formal, a little more rigid in how they're verbals and nonverbals. And when I say rigid, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not intending to be bad. People that are emoting tend to be less formal, more casual, more responsive to their environment as they need to from the people standpoint. And the task people are more comfortable with less involvement with others, where people prefer to have involvement and engagement with others. And for some, the lack of involvement and engagement can actually create some stress and insecurity that can make their life harder as they're navigating work and personal relationships. Let's dig into this a little more. How each tend to work. So we have task people at the top, people toward the bottom. Point A to point Z represents a start and a finish and a lot of steps in between. So, how they tend to work. Let's assume everybody is well intended and motivated, and there's clear goals and clear roles, and everybody's on board. All right. How task people tend to work, they're going to go from a point A to point Z in a straight line. Now, depending on what we refer to as assertiveness, they may go at different speeds. You've got some people that are more task oriented that tend to do things at a slower pace, where you have other folks that are task oriented that tend to do things at a faster pace. But generally speaking, it's more of a straight line with how they work and communicate. Based on that, can you make any guesses what the line for us people tend to look like? Go ahead and put that in the chat. What do you think the line for us people tend to look like? Anna says squiggly, zigzag, all over the place. Listen to the words being used. Yeah, you got it. This is what the how people tend to work. All this is right here is navigating relationships, interest in relationships, collaborating with people, communicating with people. Everybody wants the outcome. Everybody is focused on the goal and result. We do it differently. And this is the point where I think we judge the heck out of each other because we don't understand why the other person does it the way they do, because the way we do it works for us. And dang it, it's the best way. And if you don't do it, there may be something wrong. Okay. So here's the reality of it. People that tend to be more task oriented, they focus on the completion of the task, and they're likely to appear to prioritize the task over the relationship. Well, you can see where those challenges can start to emerge for people Because if they perceive somebody is prioritizing the task over the relationship, that could create some challenges. But here's the reality of it for task people, their needs for security tend to be less relational. They don't need the people stuff. They're not as concerned about getting approval and feeling emotional support and having connection with others. They just don't need it. Therefore, their behavior and communication tends to be less relational. This is a really, really good light bulb moment to understand and set realistic expectations. When people's needs are less relational, their behavior and communication will be less relational. Okay. Where when we look at us people, we're focused on relationships while completing the tasks. We may prioritize the relationship over the tasks. This could be getting feedback. This could be including people. This could be, you have to give difficult feedback, or you have some bad news and you kind of get distracted because you don't want to do that. But our needs tend to be relational. This is a big point for us people that we're going to dig into. We need approval. We want partnership. We want people to be on our side. We need to feel emotional support. It's not good enough that somebody just uses words. Like, we want to feel that they have our back. We want connection. And that's not a good or a bad thing. But because our needs are relational, our behavior and communication tends to be relational, and that results in us being more people oriented with how we work and communicate with each other. So both sides think they've got to figure it out because they've been doing it that way for most of their lives and it works, and you don't do it that way and there's a problem. I call this a great workplace divide. I think this is one of the bigger root challenges of relationships and stress that come in the workplace because there's feelings involved here. But here's really what happens. The task people get annoyed with the people because they see the wavy, squiggly line and they think they're distracted, too much emotion, too much talking. I mean, just go back to the words we used. Squiggly all over the place. Here they go again. You need to understand the relational nature of the people. Whatever you're describing as a lack of focus, because they're not going in a straight line like you are, they are nurturing, building relationships along the way. Can it be distracting? Absolutely. But it's not a lack of focus, it's a relationship orientation. Develop the relationship and leverage that. But this is where the people problems come in. The problem with people come in. We take things personally. We assume disrespect, and we perceive a lack of kindness and connection because they don't care about people. They only care about themselves, only care about the results. They don't smile. They don't ask questions. I meet with them once a week. Never once do they ask how my weekend is. We want the relationship stuff so much that when we don't feel it or get it, there must be something wrong there. So this is out of the gate. This is the first challenge to both sides. Take a step back, understand the nature and intentions of the people we work with, and let's not allow that lack of understanding to create those problems, because that's exactly what it does. And I think we have the opportunity right here to reset expectations for people, have greater understanding and empathy. You may not love it, but you can understand it and learn how to work differently with it to achieve stronger results for yourself. So this is very much about behavior, understanding behavior. So why do we behave the way we do? Well, we all have needs. We all have needs. When our needs are met, reflect on yourself for a moment here. Think about the needs that you have that help you feel safe, help you feel comfortable, that energize you. These are the needs we're talking about. And when your needs are met, whatever they are, you are going to be more secure, comfortable, confident, and focused. I don't care if you're a task-oriented person or you're a people person. When your needs are met, you're going to be more secure, comfortable, confident, and focused. Think about that experience. What that is like when you feel good, you have clarity, and you're able to focus on what you do. The flip side of it, when your needs are not met, it raises our tension, creates stress and insecurity, and at minimum, it's going to distract us from what we're trying to do. And we could take time and talk about all the stuff that comes into play when our needs aren't met. The judgment we have for others, the anxiety we feel, the stress we feel, the annoyance and irritation, the anger, the shutting down, the needing to control. All that stuff is a byproduct of needs not being met and our 90% kicking in to give us greater security with what's going on. So, if you want to understand why people behave the way they do, whether they're task or people, let's understand the needs. Because our needs will drive how we behave and communicate with people. People that tend to be more task oriented, their behavior and communication tends to be more task oriented, tends to be less relational. People that are more relationship oriented or the people, their behavior and communication tends to be more relational because it helps them get their needs met. So let's go back to the behaviors of the people. Observable behaviors. People tend to show emotions more. They tend to be people oriented. They tend to be more animated. They tend to be more casual, adaptable, less formal. And they have a desire to be more involved with others. And as I mentioned, we refer to these folks as people that tend to be more emoting. Now, when we're looking at patterns of behavior, one of the scales we have is the task orientation versus people orientation. We call that more controlled or more emoting. But then we have an assertiveness scale, which we're not going to spend a ton of time in. But we have about 50% of the general population also tends to be more ask assertive. And all that means for this purpose is ask assertive people, their needs revolve around on information structure and predictability. They want more information, they want more structure, they want more predictability. They are more concerned about doing things right and accurate, and they tend to be risk adverse. They don't like a lot of chaos in a lack of predictability. But as we go across the scale from left to right, we also have people that tend to be more teleassertive, and their needs revolve around action and outcomes. They want quick results. They want to take action. They need to have progress with whatever they're doing and with the people they're working with. And both sides of that can get judgy with each other as well. Okay. So as we're looking at people that are more emoting and we're looking at specifically through the behaviors of asked to teleassertive, we have two different dominant patterns of behavior, what we call social styles. So we have an amiable style and an expressive style. Both the amiable and expressive are more people oriented. They're people. Their behavior and communication tends to be more relational, but their needs are different. So this is useful for all of you on here for a couple different reasons. If you are a people person, be open to learning about your needs, even if you don't love them. Okay. When I first learned this, I did not like it. I wanted to deny it, but dang it if it isn't true. Okay. So if you're a people person, this is part of managing the potential problems, is that understanding our needs and what happens when our needs are not met. Okay. If you're task oriented, this is your key to having productive relationships with people. This isn't about warm and fuzzies and feelings all the time. Make an effort to get it. You don't have to be perfect. Make an effort to get it. But as I'm saying that, us people need to also understand that we need to make an effort to get the task oriented side of it as well. So people that tend to be more people oriented and ask assertive, we refer to as an amiable style. That's their dominant pattern behavior. So their needs are relational and revolve around information structure and predictability in relationship. So their need is personal security. What this means is consistency with people, consistency and predictability with relationship. So this leads to them making an effort to get to know people. This means they make an effort to connect with people. They like to be of value to others. They want to add a ton of value. They want to make sure everybody is good. Amiable styles are best when the environment is harmonious and they're adding a ton of value to support other people. Their orientation, their behavioral orientation is to build relationships. They are the best people on the planet. They get to know who you are and they make it their mission to make your life easier, sometimes at the expense of their goals and maybe the expense of the overall goals, which is part of the people problem part of it. So amiable style people in their relational nature can kind of fall into a category of being people pleasers because their need revolves around that predictability and structure and predictability and that security, that harmony that they may put others' needs ahead of their own to preserve that. Okay. Now, their growth action is to initiate. And all this means is get comfortable taking action. So if you're a people person who you can relate to being more amiable, your greatest opportunity for growth is to get comfortable doing the thing, saying the thing, taking the action, going after what you want, and don't worry so much about what people are going to think or what they're going to say. So that's part of the people problem is that if our needs aren't being met, we can become fixated on meeting those needs, and that may slow down our success. If your goal is to add value to people in relationships, it may be counterproductive because you may withdraw and not do the stuff that's needed because you're worried about it affecting someone in a certain way. This is a people problem for amiable style folks specifically. Okay. We're going to get into the stress dynamics in a moment here. But if you're a people person, this goes into some of the stuff that we need to learn about ourselves so we can manage it for greater productivity and versatility. If you are someone that's more task oriented, these are some of the behaviors on top that you're going to experience with those folks. And if they tend to be more concerned about the predictability, slower to make decisions because they're trying to figure things out and make sure they're making the right decision, they're likely more amiable, and you need to know what their needs are. And in the spirit of versatility, whether you're a leader working with them, whether you're a colleague working with them, what can you do to work and communicate in ways that support the personal security that meets the need that allows greater effectiveness to happen? How many of you think you're amiable on here? Just kind of make a note in the chat. Are any of you able to relate to being amiable? And like any pattern of behavior, any style, wonderful strengths that come with people. We need to know about the challenges that come with that as well. Well, let's talk about the expressive. The expressive style is also a people person. They tend to be more teleassertive, so they're not as concerned about getting the information and the details and the structure. They're not as worried about making the right decision or things having to be perfect. They're interested in getting things done now. They're interested in moving things forward. They're excited about it and they want to get going. They'll figure things out as they go. They're more comfortable with chaos. They're more comfortable with the lack of predictability. So the strengths, um, adaptable. Now, when I say adaptable, it doesn't mean versatile yet. Okay. But they tend to be more responsive to the moment, thinking on their feet, last minute decisions. I'm cool with that. I've been doing that my whole life. They don't need the structure and the rules to get going. They can take three details and make something amazing out of it. But expressive style people get excited about the outcome, the role they can play, and they're ready to get moving. Okay. And they like to be creative and innovative and independent in the process. What they want, though, is they want partnership. They need personal approval. So their needs are relational, but it's less about that harmony. It's more about people supporting what they're excited about. So if you can relate to being an expressive style, know the need you have for that partnership and that collaboration with other people, and the risk if that doesn't happen, if you don't feel that partnership with other people, how that makes you feel. Now, the orientation for the expressive style is to be more spontaneous. All this means is expressive styles don't prefer to work within a lot of rigidity, a lot of formality. They don't want to be micromanaged. I say we don't want to be micromanaged. So if you're working with an expressive style, that's something you're going to want to figure out. Now, the growth action for the expressive style is to check ourselves. Well, when I'm facilitating training, here's what I say to expressives. I say, I think Ice Cube said it best. You better check yourself before you. And if they gave you time, I guarantee we'd filter it in the chat. But you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Yep, there you go, Jennifer. The expressive style runs the greatest risk of mismanaging emotions, whether they get super excited or maybe something personally. They run the greatest risk of mismanaging emotions and overwhelming others, which lowers the desire for partnership and the effectiveness. Okay. So if you're an expressive style, wonderful things, creative, fast paced, you don't need to be babysat, you're ready to get moving. But it's also that recognition that that spontaneity could drive everybody else nuts. And that's what goes into the problem with people for people that tend to be more expressive. So how many of you can relate to that expressive? You get excited about what you're doing and you want other people to get excited with you. Heather, is that old guy reference toward me for my 90s rap reference? Middle age, thank you. Hey, Mark, I saw you raise your hand a few times. Go ahead or put it in the chat, whichever works best. Sean, that's fine. I'm told I'm expressed, but I think that's ridiculous. Expressives have wonderful strengths. They also have some real challenges that can slow them down and slow us down and hold us back. So if you're a people person that tends to be more expressive, critical that we know these things. If you're someone that's more task oriented working with expressives, just be their partner. Express desire to partner. Show interest in what they're excited about. You'll have a loyal colleague ready to get moving on that. But if they don't feel partnership, that's where it's going to go into challenges for a lot of folks. And I'm seeing Carla mentions a mix of both. Absolutely. None of this is all or nothing. None of this is all or nothing. But this goes to our dominant pattern of behavior. I tend to be more expressive. I lean toward amiable, so I can relate to both. So, what does this mean from a stress and backup behavior when stressed? So, we know what stress is. Um, all of us probably deal with it. If you're not, you're extremely unique. But our backup behavior is our stress response. So, when our needs aren't being met, um, what happens? So, I have a saying when I facilitate: when it's all good. But what happens when it's not? When things are easy and our needs are being met, and we're working in alignment with where we want to be, it's all good. But we all know the world's not perfect. So part of understanding the problem with people, and managing that is going to come down to understanding our relationship with stress and the stress response. So if we bring up the scale of ask assertive to tell assertive down to people that are more emoting, and the amiable and expressive and their needs, these are the things that are likely to cause stress for the amiable style. You want to talk about some self awareness, you want to talk about some self management, in enhancing our emotional intelligence and versatility. These are the things we need to understand and have some kind of appropriate response to so it doesn't take us out. And this goes that there's the same outline for people that are more task oriented as well. This webinar is focused on the people. Remember, the amiable styles, they want predictability with relationship, they want harmony, they want to add a bunch of value, they want to make sure they're doing a good job. So if these things are present, if they're pressure to make quick decisions, or things are changing too much, all that stuff is going to disrupt the harmony and the predictability. And when an amiable style tends to get stressed, we'll get to that in a moment. The stress response. Let's go over to the expressive style. These are the things that when the approval is not being met, when us expressives are not feeling that partnership, that support, if we're not feeling people are interested and excited in what we're doing, here's how we can kind of come through. We don't feel heard. We may feel criticized. It could be things are moving too slow. Um, You might work with a leader that tends to be more ask assertive, that's more interested in crossing T's and dotting I's, making sure things are perfect before you get the green light to go. That could be pretty frustrating. If things are too rigid, can be pretty frustrating. But these are all things that we need to manage when we're experiencing it. Because there are times where we do need to get feedback we're not going to like. There are times where things are going to move at a slow pace to make sure it's moving in the right direction. There are times when it's going to feel rigid. How are you reacting to it? Well, here's what these stress responses tend to look like. And we call those backup behaviors. So for the amiable style, when they are experiencing those dynamics, an amiable style has the tendency to acquiesce. So they're feeling the pressure and they're more likely to agree and go along with them than make a stink of it. They're more likely to tell everybody it's fine rather than stand up for what they want, stand up for what they need. If they have a different opinion, an amiable style is likely to preserve that harmony and just kind of withdraw and let things happen. And then amiable styles are going to go find their people and talk about it. So amiable styles have um, maybe a higher likelihood for some gossip there because they won't address it necessarily in the meeting or with the person, but they'll go talk about the people with the people that make them feel safe. So in the spirit of the problem with people, that's a real dynamic that you need to pay attention to if you tend to be more amiable. And that's where that initiating comes in so you don't fall into that trap. Expressive style people, we do not acquiesce, we do the opposite. We will get defensive. So if something's happening we don't like or we don't feel supported, we will stand up for ourselves. We'll likely use a lot of words, we'll have some emotion behind it. And if that defensiveness isn't changing it in a direction we want to, rarely are we going to recognize and go, okay, I get it, and move on. We may double down with confrontation, argument, pushing, which likely won't work out in our favor. Okay. So part of the problem with people for us expressives is around that emotional management and control, that emotion awareness, and what happens when we don't feel supported. And you can probably go back and both amiables and expressives probably go back in times of their life where you've seen this happen and it may not have given you the results you wanted. But this is the real deal. This is where human behavior serves us or doesn't. And the only way to combat this in the spirit of versatility and effectiveness is to pay attention, be open, admit the good, bad, and ugly, and make an effort to manage and change as needed. And if you're someone that's more task oriented, These behaviors likely are not surprising you. That may be part of your challenges with some of the people is that you've experienced this, but you may not know why, and you may not know what to do about it. So, people, strengths and weaknesses. We have fantastic strengths. Interest in people. We have a natural empathy with others. We're natural collaborators. We want to be around other people, and we tend to be responsive when they are. We tend to be responsive to their needs, whether they're positive or not. Weaknesses. We tend to take things personally. And this is a real opportunity while working with people that are more task oriented because the lack of emotion may make you think like there's something wrong or you've done something wrong. And that's not the case at all. They show less emotion. So we need to reset expectations for people who are task oriented. The relationships may distract from the goals. We may be having a heck of a time with our colleagues and having a lot of fun that may distract, or we may hear some things we don't like and that may have us withdraw or take things a little personally or get defensive. We may prioritize feelings over facts. And this is a real great opportunity to be more objective for people that tend to be more people focused. And sometimes we tend to be a little too informal and casual. It feels very rigid and kind of it doesn't feel friendly, so we may struggle with that. But versatility, we may need to do it. So I'm going to talk about 6 growth opportunities for people. We're not going to solve all the problems in the next 10 minutes or so, but I at least want to point out some things that you can take notes on and continue to learn about it if you see value. We're going to be talking about avoiding the judgment trap, setting realistic expectations, having greater awareness, emotional awareness and management, appropriate empathy, setting boundaries, and living and working with higher versatility. So, the first one, avoiding the judgment trap. We are wired to judge other people. But when we feel judgment, our likelihood is to assign traits and judgments based on that. We want to recognize those feelings and those challenges we're having with people. If we're letting human nature run the show, we're quickly going to go with things we like or don't like. We're going to assume negative traits. We're going to make judgments that aren't accurate. Avoiding the judgment trap is pushing pause, like recognizing that we have an irritation or a frustration. Get curious about the people, observe their behavior, consider their needs, and adjust your behavior to meet their needs. Now, this doesn't mean kiss their rear end or pander or people please. It just means don't let your judgment run the show. That is validating you, and it's likely inaccurate for what you need to do to be more productive in the future. So for those of us that tend to be people oriented, when we experience a lack of emotion or we experience a tone without a lot of inflection, we may assume the worst and start labeling the people we're working with that they're not nice or not friendly or don't care, and we're probably wrong. So let's observe, understand their task oriented nature, and work in alignment with that. So we want to avoid the judgment trap. We're wired to judge. It's hard work to combat that, but if we live in that space, it could run the show. We want to set realistic expectations. I saw this quote, "My problem is I expect me out of people." People who are more task oriented expect everybody to be more task oriented. People that are more people oriented expect everybody to be more people oriented. Reset your expectations for them. If you're a person, task oriented people are going to operate in a straight line. There's not a lot of emotion. They're not going to be flashy. There's not going to be a lot of emotion and inflection in their voice. Don't let that that lack of realistic expectations set you up for challenges where you're taking things personally and creating stories that aren't true. For those of you that are more task oriented, this should not surprise you. People that are relational are not going to move in the straight line that you want them to. And if that could lead to a lot of judgment on your part. Reset your expectations, give some room and flexibility for the people nature, and actually, how can you leverage those skills to help you achieve your results? Setting really expectations is critical. Emotion awareness and management. So, I went and had a physical a few years ago. I went and had a physical a few years ago, and my doctor asked me how I was doing. And because I know I'm expressive and I'm more emoting, I think I answered something. Every day is a journey managing the emotions. And he drew this for me on the back of a piece of paper that spoke volumes to me. Everybody has a different capacity, emotion capacity. Okay. We have a capacity for positive emotions. We have a capacity for negative emotions. Some people, their capacity, positive or negative, is very small. This just means the emotional volatility isn't a lot. They don't feel their highs aren't high, their lows aren't super low, they're pretty even. This sounds pretty task oriented, okay? You have other people that the range is bigger. There's more space for the positive emotions. There's more space for the negative emotions. There's more to manage. The highs are higher, the lows are lower. Then you've got folks that have an even bigger perspective on that. Get awareness around this. If you're somebody that's more emoting and you feel all the stuff, the highs or the lows, don't ignore it. Admit it. Recognize the experience is causing for you and possibly impacting how you're working with other people, and just learn more about it. Since I have learned this, um, I've really tried to manage the lows, but what I realize is the highs sometimes come down as well. So I'm figuring that out. But this is a real thing. People, you may have more emotional capacity than others, and that's okay. It's just more for us to manage. Don't ignore it, because if we do, that's a lot of space to be, that's a lot of space to not have direction or attention to it. Okay. The next area is appropriate empathy. If you go on YouTube, you can Google or you can YouTube in the search ZDog MD, ZDog MD, and type in empathy kills. So, what this gentleman does right here is he does vlogging, and he's been doing it for a long time, but he's a doctor that talks about different things in support of caretakers and nurses. But anyway, he had this video, Empathy Kills, and he outlines a study that shows three types of empathy: cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy. Cognitive empathy is where you understand that people have different needs. You don't necessarily feel it, you don't necessarily relate to it from an emotional standpoint, but you can understand that people are different and have different needs and experiences, and you can at least verbally acknowledge that, even though you don't feel it or connect to it. Okay. The second bullet point is emotional empathy. This is where you get emotionally involved in other people to the point it creates suffering for you. And this is the risk of it for people. We've been taught to be nice, kind, considerate, care. We may take empathy to a level that doesn't serve us. So you may get so involved in other people's stuff to where it causes you stress. Your concern for them may be more important than their concern for them. That's the emotional empathy. You get emotionally involved in other people's stuff to where you don't manage it causes more stress for you and suffering for you. Where we want to get to is a place of compassionate empathy, to where the efforts that we make with other people, we're connecting with them from an emotional standpoint just to acknowledge, and the things we're doing to support them actually works, right? So we don't want to be necessarily robotic to where we're just kind of reading a script. And we don't want to get so emotionally involved, it overwhelms them and causes us stress. We need to find a place in the middle. So for you folks that are people, the risk is that second bullet point of emotional empathy. Next area, setting and respecting boundaries. It's pretty simple. Amiable style folks, you may need to learn how to set boundaries because you try to be everything to everyone, which will burn you out. Okay. That's where that people pleasing comes in. That's where that avoiding conflict, that's where that not initiating comes in. So you may need to figure out what does it mean to set appropriate boundaries so that you can feel like you need to feel to get done what you need to get done. And on the flip side of it, for expressive styles, you may need to respect people's boundaries because we can get so excited, so focused on the goal, so fired up about something, we may overwhelm everyone around us and then take it personally when they don't react in the way we want them to. We have no problem running into offices, sending emails, running people over to get what we want. And that could create a lot of problems that hold us back from achieving the results we want to achieve. So set and respect appropriate boundaries. Living and working with higher versatility. This is the goal of today. You need to learn more about your 90%, your dominant pattern of behavior, your good, bad, and ugly, and get to know it, admit it, face it, and make an effort to interact and work with it. Don't ignore stuff and let that run the show. Learn about your relationship with stress. When it's all good, it's all good. But when it's not, what happens? Most of the time when we're stressed, it doesn't there's a difference between good stress and unhealthy stress. Most of the time when we're stressed, it doesn't contribute to more efficient results and better relationships. Learn your relationship with stress, what happens when you're stressed out, and what you can do to manage that. Become an observer. Don't get emotionally involved. Set realistic, this goes back to setting realistic expectations. Observe behavior and align how you're working and communicating with people based on that observation. So you're working with the most accurate information. When you understand people's strengths and their needs, you can add a ton of value working with them. If you know their needs, you can add a ton of value. But we need to be willing to admit our stuff, be an observer, and make an effort to understand other people. And then finally, prioritize progress over perfection. When it comes to achieving higher versatility, it's about your effort, not about perfection. A lot of times we think we need to be perfect. We have to hit the nail right on the head with things. Effort goes a long way. Set the goal, work toward the goal, and you'd be surprised with how much progress you achieve in the process there. But we're all on a journey. Task oriented people are on a journey. Emoting people are on a journey. People are on a journey. And the more we can learn about ourselves and each other, the more we can do this journey together in the most productive, healthy way. If you want more information about our capabilities in working with clients, you can go to e360.com. We have a variety of learning programs that support organizations in making this make sense. Or you can specifically email me at jasonkiesau at educate360.com. Appreciate everybody's participation, the questions in the chat. You will receive a follow-up email on this. Happy to schedule some time and talk about it as well. Have a great day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. This was a lot of fantastic info. And again, yeah, if anyone needs any additional information, please go ahead and visit us at educate360.com or click on any of the links I shared in the chat. I love all of this engagement. Thank you all so much for participating in the poll. Thank you so much for throwing your insights in the chat. And of course, thank you, Jason.
Thanks, everyone.
All righty, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Let us know if you need anything in the meantime, but we'll hopefully we'll see you very soon in the classroom. Bye for now.